Hey everybody, doing a stream on Jose's channel tonight. So welcome to a Catholic libertarian crossover with Jose on his stream. Jose, how you doing?
Doing all right. Just chilling. I got one of those zits that's like right in the lip of your like nostril. That's been driving me nuts all day. But aside from that, I'm all right. Yeah, I mean that's been driving me up the wall. But
what is another episode of the Explain to Me Like I'm Five series? So we're gonna just go bare basics. I have a bunch of questions about agorism because I know nothing about it. I know the memes. I know Sal and I know you. That's about my knowledge. And remember Pete and Jason Saber to talk about. That's about it. So, what is it? What is agorism?
What is agorism? All right. Well, that's the question. Agorism is, in my opinion, not to be confused with counter economics, but I feel like agorism, probably a good way to put it, is probably like the philosophy surrounding like counter economics and as defined by Samuel Edward Konkin III. So for anyone who wants to get into it, to read it, for anyone who wants to read it, it's like 2 books and they're super short. You can knock them on the weekend. They're literally both like maybe a little bit longer than Anime State for each one, like not much longer. So anyone ever wants to look into it, just read that. You can kind of get a good one. I do want to preface that I am giving my interpretation of Konkin, so I'm not saying I'm the end all be all of like what Konkin said. So, and I do think much like with objectivism, where it's like a thing that was defined by Rand, I think the same thing applies with agorism and Konkin. So like, I know a lot of people like to be loosey-goosey with what it means or whatever, but like, say for example, like political involvement. A lot of people are like, I'm an agorist that like votes or does political shit, and it's like, okay, cool, you can call yourself that. I don't really give a shit, but I mean, if you read Konkin, he pretty straightforward is about like this is not agorism. So I mean, do what you want. I don't really give a shit, but like if we're gonna be sticklers for definitions, it's that kind of like excludes you, but I don't really care. But anyways, what it is essentially the philosophy surrounding counter economics. Counter economics being like essentially how do I put it? Basically, to some extent, doing illegal shit, or just it's the agora. Like essentially, it's the free market, like the true free market. So it's not even necessarily that you like have to be doing illegal shit. It's just that you're not necessarily against it, and you're like a good example is like taxes. So like say you have some sort of business, say you have a farm and you have eggs or some shit, you fucking selling those eggs or whatever and not reporting that money to the feds that's fucking that's agorism in a sense. I know a lot of people make jokes about agorism, about just like selling lemonade on the side of the street. That's agorism. I mean, it's kind of true to some extent, but it's more than that. It's just essentially the fully expressed free market. But yeah, I'm trying to see. It's such a vague concept. It's hard to like just when someone asks what is agorism, it's basically breaking the law. No, I mean obviously that's oversimplifying it, but yeah, I mean like I said, it's the counter economics. So there's 3 in counter economics. There's different markets. There's a black market, gray market, white market, and the red market is the way he expresses it. And the red market is like basically like no, like don't do that. That's like anything involving NAP violations. And then you have the white market, the gray market, and the black market. The white market is stuff that's just fully on the up and up. You're complying entirely with government mandates, whatever. And the gray market or the black market is the opposite of that. It's like illegal shit. It's selling drugs, it's whatever. And gray is kind of like that in between. It's that like fuzzy area where it's like, like say you have like say for example, like I use the egg example. Is the feds really going to come knocking down your door because you sold some eggs? I mean, like you could legit probably tell a tax collector that you sell eggs and you exchange in cash and you don't claim that stuff, and they probably wouldn't care. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, that's what normal people do. But in a sense, that's kind of what you're not supposed to do. So it's like that's why it's this like gray, fuzzy area. And I guess to some extent, I feel like the agorism is kind of pushing the boundaries of that while also not getting in trouble. But yeah, I'm kind of going really in depth now. It's hard to just like be like, what is agorism? But go ahead. I don't know if you have any other questions. So
well, you kind of answered. Let's go more detail. Who is Konkin exactly? Am I saying that right?
Konkin. Yeah, Konkin.
Who is what was he? I saw one photo of the dude and he looked hilarious.
Yeah, he is pretty hilarious looking dude. I mean, he's just basically. I honestly don't know a whole lot about his history personally. I know he essentially is the guy who wrote, that. I mean, I don't know much about him personally, to be honest with you. I know he died. For me, he died too young. He still had a lot of work to be done. He wrote like basically 3 books, but really only like 2. Because he did, like I said, it's there's New Libertarian Manifesto, there's an Agorist Class Primer, not Agorist Class Primer, and Agorist Primer, and then there's Agorist Class Theory, and Agorist Class Theory was like kind of thrown together by I think Wally Conger, I believe, if I remember correctly, and he kind of like used some of his work to kind of like complete it, but I think he kind of pieced it together somewhat. I'm talking on my ass a little bit in that one, but I know basically the only 2 fully completed works he had were an Agorist Primer and New Libertarian Manifesto, which are both great books, both very short, good checking out. And, for you, I guess I probably should just begin with a good way to describe agorism in my head is like I feel like it's wealth, power, and influence packaged differently. Like it really is very much the same. The only thing that wealth, power, and influence strategy isn't really maybe not agorism is the lobbying side of things. I know they like push for using lobbyists, but even then, I don't know. It's very much on the it's very much I don't know. I'd have to reread both those books to be like if this is like jives with agorism or whatever. Which I will say for me personally, I don't give a shit if you lobby. Like when I say I'm an agorist, it doesn't mean I'm tied to this. So I'm like. If Konkin, if I go and read and I somehow interpret his words if Konkin wasn't cool with lobbying or like utilizing lobbyists to get your way, I'm not going to immediately be like, well, no, now I don't believe that. Like, but to describe what agorism is, I don't know if that one point, if he would have an issue with that or not. This is basically what I'm getting at. But pretty much it's almost damn near the same exact thing, except for maybe with a little bit more of a focus of moving your wealth outside of the state. Which even then I would say, actually, I bet you if you talk to Jason about it, he probably would say, oh, yeah, you should move your wealth outside the state. So because that way you're not dependent on the government. So I really see very little difference aside from aesthetics and maybe even like end goals in agorism and wealth, power, and influence. But I feel like in effect, they're the same thing.
It seems to me a lot of agorists want to exist outside the state, but they want to they go live in the woods. They go get the farm. They live outside. The most power influence people are much more about the nomadic wealth, having it tied to the internet, having it tied to crypto, having it tied to stocks, so you can just move. If you have to bounce out area, you can. It doesn't seem to counter the agorism at all. It seems just different type of. I have a friend who just moved to Florida, opened up a little. I guess it's what's the word for it? Oh fuck me, what's that? Homestead. I think it's homesteading out there in Florida. Yeah, I mean, there's no weird difference in most power and influence in agorism from my understanding of agorism so far. Counter economics, are these the same kind of people who say they want to starve the state when they try to exist outside the state? Okay. That always seemed kind of weird to me. It's like they print the money already. You don't seem to be starving mutts. Like, was that something Konkin or early agorists kind of said, not knowing things are gonna be printed more, or how did it
I don't recall if that was something he said or not, to be honest with you. I mean, that is definitely a common catchphrase, and there is something to moving your wealth outside of it, because I know you say they already printed the money, but money is fungible, and you can kind of exchange value, so you can take that cash, you can move it to another form of wealth, crypto, gold, whatever, like even cash, to some extent, cash kind of like is outside the system to some extent. I know they print it, but at the same time, it's like they also kind of can't really track cash, so... I mean, obviously, I would say be careful when dealing with cash and recognize it's probably going to bomb at some point. But I know, for example, like agorism, like a lot of shit I do, dealing in cash makes things quite easy because it's they kind of can't track it. So
yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do think that to some extent starves the state. If you're taking the wealth from the system and moving it elsewhere outside of their system, whether it's their fiat or it's something else, it's something that has value, and you're taking that value and moving it elsewhere. So like, I'm kind of, once again, I'm not sure if this is something that's entirely 100, like the concept of starving the state is 100% agorism. I'm a little bit kind of shifting my views on some of that a little bit, but it's still very much sort of in line with what Konkin said. I'm a fan of Popular Liberty's like archotropism theory, and I think what agorism in a sense would do is shift the concentration of power. It's not. I know a lot of agorists think we're going to starve out the state, and maybe to some extent, kind of. I mean, it's more of like how you're describing it. But I think really what you're doing is you're creating a higher concentration of liberty in one area, and you're creating a higher concentration of authoritarianism in another area. Because I do like the idea of archetropism that like power is like a fixed pie, and I feel like that kind of makes sense to me, and we're kind of seeing it in real time right now. We're seeing, a shifting of power. We're seeing places like Florida, New Hampshire, stuff like that get more free, and we're seeing places like California and New York, shit like that, getting less free. And I think it kind of makes sense. It's kind of this yin and yang, which, I mean, I'm not to say the state won't ever completely disappear, because another part of archetropism is that he sees power as power. So we obviously, you're probably a little more like ANCAP-ish. So power isn't necessarily always immoral. So like it can be non-coercive power. So I would say to some extent, as you're shifting those powers, that some of that non-coercive power may start moving over to the, liberty area. And that does to some extent weaken. But anyways, that's getting like way inside baseball. But yeah, at the start of the state thing, yes and no. I feel like it depends. There's nuance to how you're describing it. For the most part, I kind of don't really necessarily think it is starving the state. I think you're just shifting the power, essentially, which I'm completely okay with. Like, I want to create as much of a vast divide between areas of liberty and areas of authoritarianism, because it in a sense increases the voluntariness, I guess, whatever, nature of where you are. Because if we have like essentially like a little walled off North Korea, and then 3 miles down the road you have bumfuckistan, where like you can do whatever you want, and it's kind of backwoods country, it's super free. There's gonna be amenities in this like technocratic little North Korea over here. You're gonna have your internet, you're gonna have this, you're gonna have that, but you're gonna have your freedom elsewhere. So to some extent, when you create this wide divide, it makes it much more of a voluntary choice to some extent. Still not entirely. I mean, you can kind of be like, well, those people are being coerced and they don't want to be over there, but it's like, okay, but you mean like you could just like move over there? And like, if you have this like kind of even authoritarianism across the state or the nation or whatever, then it is kind of like it's essentially you kind of can't escape it. So when you create areas where you can do, it's still like, yeah, I still feel for those people in that like those shitty areas, but still kind of like I don't know. Essentially, it is. I just want to increase the divide of power and liberty, or authoritarianism and liberty. So,
is Agorism more focused on building individual, like existing outside the state and being able to weather the storm of the state on a personal level, or are there agorists who kind of like build towns and build agorists? I don't know, Matt Erickson put it as like build a boat when the Titanic's sinking. You want to build the boat people go over to it when the ship is falling. Are agorists more individual when it comes to building their own little safety structure, or are they more like other agorists that they're building whole agorist type, I don't know, conclaves?
It's both. I mean, really, it is definitely a focus of like a lot of agorists, and even I don't remember exact quotes were from the books, but I do remember that was a focus on how we would come together. But I would say it very much just like with wealth, power, and influence, you have to start from the individual first. And that's kind of why I like things like wealth, power, and influence or agorism, because it is very much like people are like, oh, this sounds like such a selfish thing you're doing. It's like, yeah, but I have to start for myself, and then I can build up from there. And once I start being that shining beacon of liberty, then others will follow, and so on and so forth. And we'll create this decentralized network of liberty people throughout the town, the county, the state, the nation, however big you can get it. So that's why I like things like agorism or wealth, power, and influence, because it is extremely individualist. But I think that's actually the best way to go. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're just going to go live in the woods and take care of yourself. It's like, no man lives in a vacuum. We benefit from society. So it is to my individual benefit to have other individuals who think alike me. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. And
it makes more sense to focus on the local level. Like, to like have some fucking party that's trying to, evangelize to the entire country. Like, I'm going to be straight up. I don't give a fuck about the entire country.
Yeah,
like my levels of concern starts from me and works its way out. So like it's me, my family, my community, my fucking county, my state, my nation, so on and so forth. And like people have that flipped, I think, a lot of times. So yeah.
Now, I live in Florida, and so my focus is solely on the state. Nice. Yeah, I guess that's why I'm kind of like with so pissed up in popular liberty. I want to be an anti-tax here. I want so to do this paleo stuff. I want to build my votes here. Like Florida is the best place to be. I want to survive. Is a lot of people say agorism is selfish, like you brought up earlier. It's abandoning those who don't know what's going on to the powers of the state. It doesn't seem like that when you explain to me as like you're trying to build something. You can also, individual networks you can say, but a lot of people still see it as you don't want to spread the message. You want to abandon these people to the state because they're not waking up. You have to wake them up. Like, how do you respond to that kind of claim, agorists?
That we're selfish and not spreading the message. I think we spread message better than anyone. I think that's completely nonsense because on one hand, I think on an individual level is the best way you can spread the message. And even then, the things that the Agora has produced, counter economics have produced, are the best forms. Because essentially, we're focused, very market focused. And if you create something that benefits someone financially or they see value in it and not in a theory type way, you can bypass all that fucking shit. You can just bypass it. Like Uber, Lyft, crypto, what other things I've had a few, but I could think of more. But essentially those things right there, you don't even need to have the theory behind it. It starts performing on its own and people see the benefit of using it. Like say things like Uber, Lyft, they for the most part destroyed the taxi industry, which is essentially completely propped up by the government. But they created this and people were like, oh, this is cheaper, way more convenient. Why would I not use it? So it's kind of the same idea with that. We're essentially creating products that are essentially backed by the principles of liberty, and you're kind of backdooring it to where you're like, here's this thing. You're like, hell yeah, this is awesome. And the next thing you know, they're kind of, oh shit. Like, I think I actually kind of agree with this guy because look at this. That makes sense. Why shouldn't I be able to do this? Why should the government be involved in my fucking person who picks me up and brings me to another place? Like, what do they have to do with this? So I don't know. And evangelizing on some sort of large stage, I don't think has the same effect that the market has, or you do on an individual level. Those far outperform that silly nonsense.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree.
Yeah,
that's one thing that when you really look at these, just the LP strategy, the Agora strategy, and then the Paleo strategy. Paleo's like, we're going to win political power and use it. LP is just messaging, and Agora's like, no, we're going to actually make stuff and survive outside of it. And like I said, those Agoras and Paleo seem to be the most logical. And
I would actually say the Hoppian. I just had Jared on recently. I think if I had to have my order of preference of what makes the most sense, like obviously I think agorism's number one. But I think number 2 is a Hoppian strategy, and then 3 paleo, 4 probably libertarian move. So honestly, I personally actually don't really see, aside from on a state level, I don't really see the point of the paleo move. But I think it makes more sense than the libertarian move because I would be amenable to the idea of like something like a Mises GOP caucus. I like when I say amenable, I mean it's preferable if you feel like you have to be involved in politics. I could see that, and you're influencing on the edges kind of deal. Like you don't have any illusions of taking over. It's just this idea of that we're going to kind of be this force that's like very principled within the GOP that kind of influences it, and so yeah.
Nice. Now I got Zed coming on to do for the book club episode on Democracy, the God That Failed. So it's gonna be a lot of fun doing a little Hoppian months.
I don't know if you want to address this as a super chat.
Congrats on the monster. Oh, for the northern states, move. Just fucking move. Get out of there.
I mean, for if you're asking me though, I would say, obviously I'm not at all saying I'm like completely sympathetic with your situation, but I would say if you have to stick around, I do think there is something to agorism. I mean, that's not the only way. I mean, just do what you can. Side hustles, try to keep your money away from the state to some extent. And here's the thing, a lot of people like to say like, oh, you're gonna go live in the woods or whatever, but it's like a lot of agorists, like Sal used to be like live in the city, and he was like, yeah, there's so many more opportunities here, like so many more opportunities, because the like when it comes to agorism, like the more the state cracks down, the more opportunities there are for entrepreneurial individuals, and especially outside the state. Because say with like 3D printing, you say say you're somewhere that has really crazy gun control. It's like, well, you just highly incentivize a gun market that's outside of the system. So, I mean, go break some laws, baby. But like, obviously, with that comes a lot of people like to act like there's this crazy binary when it comes to like agorism. They're like, you got to go live in the woods, or if you're not 100% pure, if you're not 100% in the black market, you're not agorist. Like, no, like legit, Konkin has a formula in one of his books about weighing risk. So it's legit about like say you're running a business, for example, and you know you're going to net $100,000 in profit, but if you get caught by the federal government, they're going to hit you with a $50,000 fine. Like you have a good understanding of the laws, and that's like what you stand to lose. Like he would obviously make the point, like, well, then go for it. Like it's not even really, it's not a matter of like, is it illegal, is it not? It's a risk calculation. So like if you stand to gain more than you have to lose, it's a clear like, oh, go do it then. Like, and just maybe create some sort of slush fund as you go to be able to deal with if in case you get dinged or whatever. So it's not this crazy binary. So that's why like you can do shit like that. You can have a 3D printer and make guns for people in fucking crazy authoritarian like gun control areas and shit like that. Yeah. So it does open up avenues. I mean, obviously, don't be an idiot. Do what you feel comfortable with. Like if you're not someone who's like comfortable in the streets, don't go slinging drugs in the bad part of the neighborhood. Like probably not going to work out well for you. But just be creative, be entrepreneurial. Like think of things. I mean, we're really in a situation now where it is becoming a gig economy, and that's in some ways kind of starting to match up with what a lot of Konkin said, where that's why a lot of people getting all these different gigs, becoming more entrepreneurial. I mean, obviously, like I would say, ideally move, but you got to work with what you got, So if you're not going to move, that's my best advice. I don't know what to tell you. So
that's good advice.
Yeah.
Is there a connection to Agorism and Sterno? Because I see a lot of Agorists have Sterno in their profile pic. Like, is that just some random like coincidence a lot of the time, or is there some kind of connection there? I know you brought up Sterno before.
I mean, I haven't noticed that trend. I mean, I'm the only one Agorist that I really know of. Maybe like except for, maybe one account comes to mind, but I don't know. I don't really know if there's necessarily a connection there. Maybe it's just a matter of these are people who are more open to different ideas. Because the agorism is a little bit outside of what is the heterodox opinion of libertarians.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't really have much to say. I do like Sterner though. I think he's very good. He's kind of like anti-philosophy, and I feel like in a weird way he kind of undergirds your philosophy well. But in a non-philosophy type way, you'd have to read it to understand. And we could go deep into Sterner here, but that would be a whole other episode. So
yeah. Well, I had a few more. I had a bunch of questions, but you would go off on these tangents to kind of go through a bunch of them. Now I'm kind of sold on this. This is making a lot of sense. Like I don't know if it's one thing I would say, I don't think it needs to be the sole purpose. Like being able to, if you were going to work on local level, being able to weather the state by having outside sources of income. Like if you say you went for local office and they want to take away your PayPal or something, being able to have that outside the control trust fund does seem kind of helpful. Would you say, a lot of agorists don't think political strategy is a good idea at all. They're very against it. I've seen some of them even go as far to say things like it never accomplishes anything. And even when people get let out of prison for some political power, they say, oh, great, now you can just pay taxes. So that's very, very anti-political power. Why are so many agorists you think really against political action? Because you seem kind of more don't give a shit about it, but why do you think there's that ring of agorists who really hate it?
I'm not a fan of utilizing it. I don't think it's really we're speaking in broad brushes because it's like what are you proposing, and I could say what's preferable and what's not, because like I said, I think the Hoppian strategy is preferable to the LP strategy. Like it depends on what you're talking about, but even then I think generally I am of the opinion that you generally shouldn't, but I do understand a lot of people are going to. I mean, I'm not a fan. I don't really feel like it does accomplish much. Yeah, I do think a lot of people make stupid arguments though. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to. Want to repeat the question real quick? Sorry, I kind of lost it. I was getting zoned out.
It's all good. No, it's why do you think so many agorists get all autistic about political power and political strategy?
political power, political strategy. I do think that generally doesn't work. And I know you bring up the point that's like this person gets out of jail, that person this, oh, they legalize it here, blah blah.
Very well.
Yeah, but the problem is, and I always bring up this point when speaking on like Ron Paul, because people always use Ron Paul to like be like, well, what about Ron Paul? You fucking look at all he did. And it's like, don't get me wrong, Ron Paul was a shit, but it's like the very point that you immediately go to Ron Paul and everyone immediately goes to Ron Paul is kind of the point. Like
once in a blue moon.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's essentially you got to look at it as a losing casino. Like it's like playing the penny slots. Like if you played the penny slots every day of your life, one day you're going to hit the jackpot. You will. But if you look at this, like if you take away those good feelings you had from that one jackpot and you critically analyze the entire time you've spent doing this, what the fuck happened? Like, did you win? Did you lose? But we have this, the way our brains tend to work is we tend to look at really bad things and really good things. And then we focus on those. Whereas especially like when we're talking in context of state, generally speaking, we don't usually get really bad things. We get a little bit bad, a little bit bad, a little bit bad. It's the whole boiling the frog thing. And then every now and then we'll have this like really awesome thing that kind of reignites hope, like Ron Paul or Dave Smith or whatever. And then you're like, holy shit, maybe we can do something. Whoa, like, what are we going to do? Oh, we're going to get the message out there. We're going to make so many new libertarians. And then, but then like what, then if you look at the long arc of history, like what did it do? Did you get anything out of it? Like, yes, you can say, oh, here's this win, here's that win. But are you really being fair and counting the losses? Because you were losing. Like, and so and to some extent, you're kind of building this up by being involved in it. You're feeding it into it with your energy. It's the same idea. Like Twitter's a good example. Like I did the Block Sarwalk thing, and now he's basically fucking irrelevant. It's kind of like people were feeding that thing. Like he was being eternally ratioed, but he still existed. He still was a thing. He was still like eating away at people's like thoughts, and they were fucking. Like, oh, let's slam on him. And like they kind of, to some extent, were perpetuating him. And once we just were like, nah, we're good, he kind of slithered away. And to some extent, that kind of applies sort of to the state. I know a lot of people are like, well, they're going to come get you. But it's like, okay, I mean, sure, maybe. But what do you mean by me? I mean, if we have a group of people who just kind of like, we're not really fucking with this anymore. What do you mean? They're going to go get every one of us individually, even though we're like insanely decentralized? That sounds dumb. How well has the state ever handled any sort of guerrilla warfare or decentralized movement whatsoever? Not so fucking well. So I don't think this is going to work out well for them. I know a lot of people like to strawman agorists as if they're like these men on an island type thing, but it's not at all what people are pushing for. Yes, we're individualists at prime, like at the root, but we build out from there. Like we're not this like one thing living on an island. Yes. There will be the Wacos. There will be the one dude who gets blown away somewhere. But yes, there obviously will. But if you look at the overall, like most people would probably be okay. And even then, a lot of like things like Maddie says when he says like when he talks about like kind of say with stuff like protesting or where you kind of like are going against the state. Essentially, you're kind of flagging yourself to some extent is something. Whereas if you go like the agorist route and you're like no longer feeding into it, you're not even really making yourself a red flag. You're just kind of you're like, all right, cool. You're kind of the guy at the dance that's kind of off in the corner playing in his phone. Like no one pays attention to him. It's the guy who's screaming. Fucking. Oh, did you just look at my girlfriend that they're going to be causing problems with? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that is where the shit is going to be. So to some extent, engaging with the state gives it power and also kind of fucks yourself over. So
puts you on the radar. You gotta,
yes, exactly. So
that makes perfect sense. Oh well, yeah. My Twitter handle is Caleb Brown 549. CalebBrown 549.
And I put his YouTube channel in the fucking description. So go hit up that. Go subscribe to him. So he's has a lot of great content, a lot of big guests. Especially like if you're big into like theory and stuff like that, he has a lot of good people to talk about, like Hoppians, like all sorts of different shit. So a lot of good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know how I get any of these people to say yes.
I mean, he's gonna ask.
It's crazy.
People think there's some like special thing going on here, like the podcast is fair. It's like really it's as simple as asking. I mean, I feel also. I mean, there is some sort of like tact to asking. You got to be polite about it or feel them
Yeah.
out or know their vibe. But for the most part, he's asked. There's very few people that are like hard to get.
Yeah.
I mean, and even then, the ones that are hard to get, it's understandable, like Tom Woods, Dave Smith, etc. I mean, there's a few people, but really, it's a small handful of people that are hard to get, and pretty much most of them you can just be like, "Hey, you want to come on?" Like, okay.
I mean, most people are like 30 minutes talk about something I like to talk about. Why say none of that? Well, we've gone for 30 minutes. I really don't have many more questions. I mean, trying to think about you said a lot of things here. I'm trying to my head around all of it and see if there's anything else I missed. No, I think I agree with actually a lot. I think I agree with most of it. I mean, especially the not getting the eye of the state. I mean, I know it's overused metaphor, but eye of Sauron, don't get in front of it, kind of thing. And yeah, does podcasting go against that though? I mean, if you wanted this podcasting, like just being on Twitter, being on podcasts, spreading these ideas of agorism, kind of like, does that not throw you in front of the eye at all? Or?
I mean, maybe. I mean, let's be real. Do they really give a shit about some dude with 1,000 subscribers?
No.
I don't know. I mean, I genuinely don't really think so. I mean, they have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah.
I mean, if that comes to it, I'm armed. Whatever.
Send bachelors.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go. I think that's about it. Go ahead and plug. I mean, it's your show, but also I guess plug your stuff, and then I'll plug my stuff, and we can.
Yeah, follow me at Galison Jose. On YouTube, I'm the No Way Jose Show. I'm also on all the major podcatchers. If you want to give me money, patreon.com. It's just No Way Jose 2020. Daniel has a question, so we'll hit up that, and that's that's all my plugs. Give me money. I like money. So yeah, drop a super chat if you want to say some shit. So.
What does crypto play? Yeah, I had that with it. Well, down, but you kind of went into it a little bit. But I guess go more detail. What does crypto play exactly?
I mean, I am very all right. Here's the thing: like when it comes to crypto, like in theory, I'm super into it. Like I love it. It's awesome. On the other hand, I'm a gigantic tech retard, and like I still haven't fucked with it. It's so daunting to me, and I keep being like I need to get into it, but. Like, dude, it was so hard. Like, it was so hard to even get into podcasting. I had to be like strong armed into it by like one of my buddies that was like, "Hey, you need to get into podcasting. Like, you really need to do it. You have a good like, you be like, I'm really telling you, like, you have the voice for it. Like, not even the voice. I have a shitty voice, but like, you are smart enough. You're good enough to do this type of shit." And I'm like, I don't know. I don't even understand the tech. And then he just kind of like walked me through it and eventually figured it out. But yeah, I think crypto is very interesting where it's going. I think it definitely will play a lot into the future. I mean, I don't at all claim to be a crypto expert, but in theory, I think it's pretty awesome how that's going to work out in the future. Like, I know a lot of people make the argument though that like, oh, well, the state's already getting involved in crypto here and there and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, of course they're going to, but it's the whole point of like the market like outpaces the state. It just always does to some extent. God, what was that? I think it was Jordan Peterson on his episode with, I believe, Bob Murphy. Maybe it was that episode. Might have been another one. But he was talking about how like the state is always at a disadvantage because they also have to exert energy to deter you from doing what you want to do. So when it comes to things like technological innovations like crypto, yes, they're going to get into it, but they're going to be kind of getting into it after it's already like kind of, as time goes on, as we pick up speed with technological innovation, it will pick up and pick up and pick up. But and we'll be able to like outpace them. But like, yes, they do have their dirty dicks in crypto already in certain spots. But you got to understand that like with this innovation, it creates an opening where you can follow that opening and move your way towards liberty. But there also will be areas that get taken over by a state. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I guarantee you fucking 100, 200 years from now, the state is going to have their fiat that is crypto. But on the other hand, there will probably be areas like, say, with Vin, who's in like Saipan, who has like a crypto like neighborhood there. Essentially, there will be areas where they're using, like crypto that's not KYC, and they're able to fucking do whatever the hell they want, and it's this tool for freedom. So these are just tools that are being created that can be taken over by like liberty or authority or whatever,
Yeah, it really seems like with technology leading to decentralization, like the internet, you can't get rid of a book anymore if you wanted to. It's everywhere. That with decentralization technology, the algorithm really does seem more of a possible future. Like I would have a hard time believing an algorithm being possible if you had no way of really staying connected, making the network, or really making your own guns, that kind of thing. But now with the 3D printing, with everything else, it seems a lot more possible. Danny says something. I know you think it's contradictory, but I like using MC to get people connected. It seemed like who was it? I saw Pete Canone was talking with Saudi Agorist, and he was brought up like if the LP was a place you can go and give money, and they gave you tips and tools, like they did like a like if you gave money to the LP, and in return they gave you a bunch of books or guide tips on how to be an agorist, like that make more sense to me, honestly. If they were like if the LP was like the Mises Institute for Agorism, like the Agorism Institute or something, like that would make sense. But they're not doing that.
I do want to respond to what Daniel's saying though about that, because yes, you're right. It is a good place to build community, but you know what? You don't need that. So there's cons, in my opinion. I've laid out the cons in multiple videos in this video of utilizing the political route, especially in regards to the fucking LP. Like there are cons, and you don't need that to build community. Look at stuff like what is it? Freedom Cells, for example. Like, and yes, I get it. It's probably doesn't have the infrastructure to the sense that the LP has now. But it's all about what you put your energy into. And that actually, the fucking Freedom Cells has been like booming over time. I don't know what they're at now, but I remember when they were booming during the height of the COVID lockdowns.
What is Freedom Cell? I haven't heard about this.
Hit up John Bush. He's the guy. He's got Freedom Cells. Essentially, it's just a decentralized network he's created of people where I want to say it's 7, maybe 6, 8. I don't know. Something like 6 to 8 people that create like a cell. And the more people get involved in the Freedom Cell, the more decentralized it gets. So essentially, like, say you are able to scrounge together 8 people in your county that meet up fairly regularly, whatever, have a Discord group, have a text group, whatever it is. You mean it's a difference for everyone. It's kind of a loose concept. And then let's say you get to the point where it grows to 16 or whatever, and you're like, okay, well, now this is big. Now we break up. And instead of being county, then now you're like, oh, now we're going to do it by city. And as it gets more people go into it, like, oh, instead of city, we'll do it by, like neighborhood or whatever, or general area. And the more people build into it, the more decentralized it gets and the more localized it gets. And it's just it really is just a group of people that are like-minded, mostly agorists. Not all of them are, but generally people who want to live outside the eye of the state to that extent. So these are people who come together. They do they will do projects together. They'll build gardens as a group. So there's all sorts of things. It's whatever you want to do. And generally it's just a little group of people who are like-minded that kind of come together and do that. And you know what? That sounds like a far better idea than LP. And like, yes, maybe they might not have the infrastructure right now, but you invest your time into that, go that route, and it builds up. And yeah, I mean, I highly suggest people do that. I don't do it. I'll be honest. I'm much more of a loner. I'm not really like a person who thrives off social interaction. I'm always busy with my own shit. But if I was going to, I don't need shit like the LP, in my opinion. I mean, I know people, so like I do have connections and stuff, but it's just not in that like socialized kind of way. I don't feel the need to go on like regular meetings and stuff. But if you are that social butterfly type, there's shit like that. You don't need to go to the LP. You don't need to go to the GOP. You don't need to do that shit. I mean, yeah, it's the same idea people use with like, say, like church, like for like theism or whatever. And it's like, oh, well, the church is a great place to build community. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you can't go to a bowling club or whatever the fuck. You can get community elsewhere. Community isn't this magical thing that only the church or only the LP provides. There's a bunch of other ways to go about it. So
yeah, there's actually a lot of churches think about this with Agorism. Like the churches would be I would say some go to the Catholic church, but a lot of old people. Like I think I'm the youngest guy in that church. Everyone is about 70 or older. They want to have regular communion and they want to have regular services, and they want to be outside the state's influence because they're really tired of having to have the mask on. And it does seem like bringing Agorism to, like, say, a church and creating that local community there would be kind of fun, honestly. I have to work on that. How bad is the Tsipo area between Pensacola and Panama?
I'll be honest, I'm very much like in my bubble. I don't know much about shit outside of my area. Like, I mean, I know I've been to, like, I've been in Florida for probably like 10, 11 years now, but like I don't really ever journey outside of Tampa. I mean, every now and then I go to like Miami or Orlando. Obviously, those are more city areas, but I don't really know much about those areas. I couldn't tell you much. I do respond to this. This is a fucking cop-out. I'm sorry, Daniel. I love you, but I hate this criticism of like, well, we all just need to do what we feel is right. it's the market and we'll decide. And like, yes, but that's what's happening right now. I'm literally using my speech to try to convince you that what you're doing is dumb. So like, I disagree with what you're doing. I don't think it will produce liberty. Prove me wrong, sure, but this marketplace of ideas stuff is nonsense.
Yeah.
And to some extent, there's always a finger on the scale to where influence stuff like that. So sure, but I mean, I understand people are going to do what they want to do. Go do what you want to do. I don't give a fuck. I'm not even trying to be confrontational about it. I actually think being confrontational generally doesn't get the results you want. So it's better just be friendly. But just be like, oh, we should all just do what we want, or why can't we all just go do our own thing? Why do you have to criticize us? I criticize it because I have criticisms. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm sorry. I get tired of hearing this all the time. It's such a fucking cop out. It really is. And it's just this, like, it's almost like this guy, stop it. Like, and it's like, okay, I mean, here's my opinion. You don't want it. Cool, move on. And I generally, like, if we're, like, I don't really ever do it except for, like, on my show or shit like that. I mean, every then I might make a sly comment. But if I'm in a place where it's, like, confrontational, it's an argument, I don't see the benefit. Like, and I say a lot of times, I've learned this from my days being an angry atheist, you know, because you're in this place of being an angry atheist because you want to convince people. Like, you generally like, oh, these people are lost. They don't understand. Like, they don't get it. Like, and you're like, I'm going to fucking tell them. But like, you being such a aggressive asshole, like, doesn't help. Like, if anything, you're putting them off. And that's the same idea when it comes to like tactics, strategy. I don't get why the fuck everyone can't get along, as gay as that may sound. I don't get why.
It did sound pretty gay.
Yeah, it sounds gay. And by that, I mean, like, I do think we should be able to do like what I'm doing now. Like, if you ask me, I go, well, here's my criticisms. And then you go, oh, well, bully point, good sir. And then you provide your criticism, or you don't engage. If you can't handle that type of discussion, don't do it. If you get offended by it, if you get heated, then maybe don't. Like, I don't know what to say. But like, yeah, I do think, like, when it comes to tactic strategy, there's no reason we have to be at odds. Like, even if you are like, hey, I think by going this strategy, you're fucking us over, I think generally being an asshole doesn't help anything. So that's why I am getting a lot irritated with all this, like, these, like, sniping with, like, the post-libertarians, the libertarians, the paleos, the agorists, whatever. It's kind of like, and as lame as it may sound, it's like, guys, get along. But it's kind of like, you guys don't need to be, like, aggressive. Like, you guys can handle this like adults and talk about it, or don't. Because if you're going to be confrontational or aggressive, nothing is benefited. Like, you're not benefiting anything. Like, you're not convincing anyone. I mean, at best, maybe you can make an argument that you're creating some sort of, like, signal to your in-group, but I feel like even that just is like, just makes your in-group think you're an asshole. Like, that's about it. Like, yeah. Someone had a super chat up there, I think.
Real quick, the person who wanted to move to Florida, if you're gonna move to Florida because you're thinking about it, anywhere in Polk County, that's the place to go. That's Central Florida. You're close to everything. Lakeland's the fastest growing city. You can still live on the outskirts, but things aren't that expensive. It's the place to go.
Oh, Grady Judd is fucking base as shit too.
Oh,
like, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a super fucking, like, boomer con and like very drug warrior and shit like that. But Jesus Christ, like, if I could create a community of Grady Judds, like, I would live there. Like, okay. I mean, obviously, I'd probably, like, you know, spray some air freshener when I smoke my weed and shit. But for the most part, I'm like, these guys are pretty base. Like, I can get down with these people.
most cops in Polk County do not give a shit. It's really only him. Like, I know a lot of cops here who do not care about the drug stuff. It's just the sheriff because he's such a boomer. But when it comes to everything else, that dude's fantastic. Except when it comes to that one, we had one riot in Lakeland. Like 5 guys stood in the road, and he put the entire county in lockdown and had a curfew. And it's like, you kind of overreacting here, you boomer.
Yeah. Why do folks assume freedom equals aggression? I don't really know what you're getting at here, to be honest with you. I don't know if you get what he's getting at.
If I had to guess, I would say he means when you try to get off your own personal freedom through agorism, you are abandoning people, and selfishness to do is aggression. So I guess that you're aggressively ignoring people because you want your own freedom. But even then, fuck those people.
Yes.
Like,
I'm sorry. My priorities begin with me and work outward. So if you're, I'm sorry. I mean, that's even, like, it's kind of like yes and.
They even put like a biblical spin on it because it's like I am Catholic. Jesus said to love your neighbors as yourself. You have to love yourself before you can love your neighbor. Like Ayn Rand said, you have to say the I. When you say I love you have to say the I. Jesus said the same thing. Love yourself before you love your neighbor. So make sure you are set. If you can't help your neighbor until you are set, and it's even same here. Before you point out the plank in the speck in your brother's eye, put the plank in your own eye. So there is a lot of biblical stuff about even getting yourself situated. So it's I get so mad at people who get so mad about stuff.
That's what he meant. Yeah, he said 100.
Awesome.
So you got it. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, it's like, okay, you're not my fucking responsibility. So it's like, it's such a shitty criticism when people say like, oh, what about these other people? Okay, yeah, what about those other people? Like, I'm saying right now what I think is the best way to go about it. And if you don't want to do it, I don't know what to tell you. I hope that somehow my influence extends to you, but it probably won't because you're outside my localized area. But I don't.
There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, it's kind of the idea of like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Like, I'm telling you what the best thing to do is, and you're whining. You're like, well, what about everyone else? I'm telling these everyone else. Like, if they don't take the advice,
there's a sale button. You can hit it.
Yeah,
say it to your own community. Yeah,
like I can't make you better. And it's this idea that like, oh, if we abandon the political route or whatever, you're abandoning these people. It's like, well, I don't think this is fruitful to begin with. So I don't
really think the wine moms who are CNN are going to care about any of this or want to change their mind. There's no power in it for them. It's a waste of time. I honestly, I get so mad with this. So like, we need to convert people saying it's like, even if you were like, again, to bring the Christian stuff, the Bible says the best way to convert is to live your life as you want to be, live free and be yourself. And, people will come to you because they see what you're doing. The same principle applies with agorism. It's like, this is very, my friend Craig Hoggis at the Bag Roman is a Christian agorist. He's very big on, kind of artistically big on the whole, like, this is the only way Christians can be. But yeah, it's cool. What's the Kings? Cool.
I love you too.
I don't know who you are, but subscribe to my YouTube channel. We'll talk.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess we kind of went longer past the plug stuff, but that was fun. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for streaming it on your channel for more people and for letting me host it. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you dropped your plugs. So
Caleb Brown 549 on Twitter. YouTube channel is Caleb Brown, Catholic Libertarian. I will have the website up soon where I'm selling merch. You can get your own Democracy is Cringe. Democracy is Cringe, bro. Someone says to make it Democracy is Cringe, so it can be Dick. But I might do that. And the Star Wars sequels are ass, Daniel, and you can sub it up your own ass.
I spoke on the red market earlier. This breaks NAP, so.
Yes, that is fair. Okay, everyone have a good night, and I guess just cut the stream when you're ready, because I'm done.
Yeah.